Hello everyone, welcome to Past Preserver, and today we're going to be working on a hit and miss engine. Wait a minute, you're not a hit and miss engine. This here is a 1920s Taylor, and we've got videos on the channel getting it up and going, and it truly is a hit and miss engine where it will fire and then it'll cycle down and then it'll fire again to bring its RPM back up. This is a 1920 to 36, 37 International Model M. Not to be mistaken with the tractor, the International Model M. That came out much later. But this engine fires every time it makes a cycle, much like a modern engine. And how do I know this is a 1920s to 36, 37? Well, besides the tag, which I need to look up, and we'll see exactly what year it is, this has a normal style carburetor to run off gas. An older style of this, which was like 1917 to 1920, they had an igniter up here, which is a little bit different than a spark plug picture, and a dual style carburetor that would allow you to start it on gasoline and switch to kerosene. This particular model has a carburetor that sits up here. It draws fuel in that is pumped. There's actually a little fuel pump down there, which is drawn in from this base. Here's your filler cap to that. We'll open that in a second. Ooh, man, that's got a smell. Oh, not good, not good. And I'm not quite sure how we're going to clean that out, considering the tank, there seems to be a vent right there. Is this base? Well, there's our drain. I'd call that a drain. So we might have to pop that off and see what sludge comes out. Oh boy. But cleaning this up's not going to be fun. At least it should be fairly... Oh no, there's actually a normal tank up under there, isn't there? Yeah, there is. Okay. I am not an expert on these engines, and I don't claim to be, but we're going to learn as we go along. So, alright, maybe we could take that tank out in some way, but for now, we'll just see what we can do about draining it. But back to the carburetor and why we won't have this running for a little bit. The top looks pretty okay, but this adjustment knob definitely is not turning how we want it to. This end knob bit is loose on there, and as you can see, someone has fixed it with JB Weld. There's supposed to be like a tube in here, and I guess they broke it off and made one out of JB Weld. So I won't actually be able to run this engine until we get to that, so you can meter how much fuel is going through. Also, it needs gaskets made because they were pretty junk and gone. We do, however, have a proper muffler, so this should run a little quieter than the Taylor does. What's the goal for this video? Well, we're going to fix it up a little bit, pour some gas down where the carb should be, and see if we can get it to fire off. Now, I've already checked for spark. This Whiteco EK Mag does not have spark, so we'll go into cleaning that. Hopefully it's just the points. If not, we might have to dig in a little deeper. I also want to clean out these grease cups a little bit. We have 3 of them. One kind of greases the governor and this little bit here. And then the other 2 are for your bearings. You're probably asking, how do you get to the crank bearing? There's a big plate here. I guess you could take that off. And most other engines have one on them where you can just turn it in and it'll push grease in. That's how these work. You have the cup full of grease, and then you turn it in and it will grease the bearing. But you're looking at this and you're like, well, there's one for this, one for that, one for that. Where's it at? It's this guy over here. Grease will be pushed all the way through the center of this shaft into the crank. We actually will pop this off real quick. So let's see about popping this plate off. Oh, yep, there's a gasket. Figured. And down in here we have our crank. Ooh, that's kind of nasty up in there, isn't it? We may have to get up in there and clean that. Well, let's see what we can do here first. See how that works. We got compression, mag fire. Basically what you're looking at is this. This engine has a lot more compression because it has a dual stage piston. This is called a vacuum engine, and there's a big piston on the back and then a smaller one towards the front. So every time you make a rotation, you're making a suction here as well as compression on the front to fire the engine. So this is almost like turning a 2-cylinder over, and that's why this one turns over so much easier. Especially once you get these big flywheels in motion. Now let's see if I can get this to do it. I don't know if there's any grease actually in. No, there doesn't seem to be. This grease cup here on the outside is set up to where if the engine is running, you can grab onto it and it will squeeze it in. So you can easily add grease to this bearing. You're probably looking at this thing and wondering, well, what's that drain for if that's for the fuel tank? Well, that up there is called an oiler. And what that will do is drip oil down onto your piston rings. And as the engine moves back and forth, it will keep it lubricated. Now all that oil has to end up somewhere, and it will end up back here in this little reservoir. And so you would want to put a catch cup or something under here so the oil can flow out and into something. Otherwise, much like on this engine, it's going to build up. As you can see here, we have a nice puddle. But here's a little better look at what's happening. We'd turn this on, it would start dripping oil down, and as the piston comes back, it'll get up on here and find its way up to the rings. Now on this Taylor engine, you want to run 2-stroke fuel because this is basically just oiling the back ring. The front ring is so far forward that this one oiler just doesn't do it. I've seen online where people have come up here and drilled a hole into the casting and then have a secondary oiler in the front so it can drip onto that front half of the cylinder. So it can drip onto the front half of the piston. But for now, I'm just going to run 2-stroke in it to keep it lubricated. This engine, we can just run straight gas. While we're on the subject of greasing things up, this is how this works. You have this little cup here. This is reverse thread, so righty loosey, lefty tighty. That way when you grab onto it, it'll draw it in and squeeze grease into that main bearing. And we open it up, and as you can see, there's a big glob of grease in there. We'll have to pull some of that out and put fresh in because I just don't know about it. It's so old, and I just kind of want to put fresh in this thing. On top of the grease ports, you also have to keep an oil can nearby because there are a ton of little holes here and there that you need to pump with oil just to keep it all lubed up. Unlike a modern engine where you have an oil pan, a pump, and everything's just self-oiling, you are the oil pan, you are the pump, you have to keep this thing lubricated, otherwise it will just lock up on you, and that's no good. You know, there are a bunch of moving parts and every one of them requires a little bit of lube to stay free. The governor on this engine has a start position and a run position. I never liked how close it was to the flywheel on these things because this is spinning around and you're expected to get in here and whoop, flip that down. Because you got to think this thing will be moving, this rod will be moving, and there's a spinning flywheel. And on top of it, if you have a bad spark plug wire, you might get yourself zapped. So I don't know why we couldn't have located that somewhere a little safer, but that's the way it is, you know. Dangerous. Okay, now that we've gone over the basics of this engine and how it works and compared to a modern engine, let's take a look at this mag. These mags are actually fairly simple. This is an EK Wico, and normally they would have a little stop button here, but obviously this thing being spinning around, you're not going to be able to get your finger up in there to kill it. As you can see here, oh yeah, there's also an oil port here you've got to keep oiled. But there is a nice little stop button where you can kill the engine. This one makes sense, whereas that one does not, to have the stop button. Also, that one's a little easier to service because our points are underneath this cover. And in order to take this cover off, we have 2 screws on the front, 2 screws on the back. When you go to pull this top off, there is this guy, and he's got a spring behind him. And on the back side, there's a little tab that protrudes out. So make sure you don't tear that tab up, but this whole thing will kind of pop apart and you just slide it straight up and then these side covers will come off. and that will give us access to the points, which are right here. Now a stop button is going to ground out against the points. There's a big washer in there, and when you push that button, it's going to ground it out. But of course this one doesn't have that. Okay, I've got all 4 of those out. We want to kind of pull out on this, and be careful you don't lose anything, because that wants to go. Oh no, I lost it. Do as I say, not as I do. There's that little tab on the back you want to keep an eye out for, so when you pull up, you don't jam it into this and tear that tab off. Set that to the side. Look for our cap, which, oh boy, I guess that was getting good connection. I feel like that should be over a little more, shouldn't it? Anyway, this just kind of pops off here. Still haven't found our cap. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. Well, if that went straight on there, I guess it would have had good connection. I guess it would have been touching. Okay. And right down in here are our points. Now, that doesn't look terrible, but we'll go ahead and get some emery cloth in there and try and clean these things up. And then you have to put the cover back on to find out, because obviously you have to have, you know, a spot for your spark plug wire to go. So I'm going to fiddle around with cleaning those points, put it back on, we'll see if we have spark. Well, I'm looking at this thing, the points don't look too bad, but we do have a major issue. Someone has put a carriage bolt in here, and I'm like 99.9% sure that wasn't right. And look at where it's touching. It's going all the way through, and it's touching the points. The top of the points are touching this bolt and getting grounded out to the engine. Wait a minute, that's not how this should be at all. Because that's just going to kill the motor. Also, the end of that bolt obviously has been rubbing against the housing. And what did we go over before? That's right. There's a stop button on some of these in about that spot, and that's how you would ground it out to kill it. So this thing has been self-grounding for all this time. I bet the previous owner was having a run issue with this and couldn't figure out why they didn't have spark, and well, that was one of the issues. The obvious fix to the carburetor tells me there's been more wrong with this engine before, but I bet they threw that bolt in there, didn't realize what they did, and yeah. Okay, so we're gonna find a shorter bolt or cut that one off, and I'd like to find a more proper bolt that size, put it on there, and we should have spark, because this mag looks pretty healthy overall. I don't see anything major wrong with it. I found a bolt with a lock washer, and it's not touching anything, so we should have spark. Well, I did a little bit of fiddling with it, but let's see if you can see it. You see it? We got spark. It looks all right. It's nice and blue. Okay. I'm gonna go through and put a little grease in these cups, and we'll dribble a little gas down it and see what we get. Well, I wish I could have found my gloves. That was very messy. Oh well, there you got some fresh grease in all the cups. We're gonna go ahead and throw a little bit of oil in our dripper. Fill that up. Maybe, if I still got oil in this thing. Okay, well, I guess it's lower than I thought. I guess we'll just give it a splash of gas down the carb and see if she wants to fire off a little bit. And I'll carb the inlet. Yeah, that's probably just gonna flood it. Well, see if we get a putt at least. Close that, turn the oiler on. It's a dripping. Hey. Alright, carburetor, clean the tank, and we should have a good runner here. Woohoo! We'll take it. So that's going to do it for this video. Make sure to leave a like, hit subscribe. I'll see you in part 2 when we get this carburetor and tank sorted out. When we get this carburetor and tank sorted out. And you have yourselves a great day. Hopefully we can get both these running at the same time. I'll see you then.